Welcome to Hawks and Bushcraft. Today I kind of want to take a minute and talk to you about kind of the philosophy, kind of some thinking I've been doing about trapping and snaring. I've been watching all these kind of cool videos on YouTube, and some of you folks and other folks setting snares and whatnot. And I started thinking about that, and I kind of had some thoughts about it. And this isn't to say don't do it. It's not to say don't practice. It's not to say that it's not going to be an effective ways of procuring food. But I just wanted to think for a minute here, and I'm not wanting to get in an argument or anything in the comments. This is just mainly just for fun, just an exercise. You practice setting these little snares, and the animal, watch a bunch of these videos, and they'll take their stick and they'll pound it, and the flare will go up and the snare will go up. Sometimes it'll catch the stick, sometimes it won't. It's good, learning a lot, but they always, they never bait their stick. They say, well, I'll just bring back some peanut butter, or I'll do this or that. And if you're in a situation where you have to survive, where you're actually running snares, illegal snares, as a source of your food, are you gonna actually put out the calories that are in that little teaspoon of peanut butter or bread or whatever? Are you gonna risk it on setting up a snare, or are you just gonna consume those calories? Because once it goes on the ground, it gets wet or dirty or whatever, you might not eat it. And those calories are gone on the assumption that you might catch something. So we'll go from there. Now, when I was younger, I used to trap, and I trapped a little bit. I'm not super great at it or anything. I'm not an expert. I'm learning. But I used to trap when I was a kid, and I'd catch raccoons, and I'd catch nutria, and I caught some beaver. And the thing about trapping is it's not very consistent. At least it wasn't my experience. And I know that some of you have a lot more experience in it than you do, and a lot of you have a lot more experience than I do, probably be more successful. But no matter what kind of trapping I did, there's always a limit of you're only catching so much. And I don't know how many traps I would have had to run to make that a reliable source of food, to actually make it pay off. And even now I'm got a family. There's 4 of us. Am I going to be able to trap enough to feed my family if it comes down to it? And there's a lot of animals out there, but you're a trapping and everybody's trapping, or people that are in the know are going to be trapping. How many of them animals are going to be left? I was looking up the thing earlier, and it said there's in higher densities, like 40 raccoons per square mile. And then lower densities in the U.S., it depends, if you're in the city or whatever, but let's say it's 40 people per square mile, which is on the lower end. That's 1 for 1. And if everybody takes their 1 raccoon, now we're out of that resource in a day. And then you go to nutria or deer or whatever, eventually those resources are gonna run out. And so it's not to discourage you, it's to get you thinking. But back to the bait thing, is trapping's is passive. You catch stuff, but it's not always as consistent as you might hope it can be. And are you going to gamble part of your food or rations for that inconsistent gamble? So your option is, okay, I'm going to run a non put something in there that like something natural. Well, it's middle of winter time in the snow. What are you going to use? And I'm not criticizing. I'm just getting you to think. It's something I started thinking about. I watch these videos, and they never really bait anything, because they're not really trying to catch anything. They're just showing us how to make it. But what are you going to actually bait that with? And if you're in a survival situation, let's say you actually your truck breaks down, you got to hike out, and if you were to trap, you know, what are you going to use? Are you going to use part of your candy bar and burn those, let those calories get away from you, or are you going to try to find something natural? And that brings me to another point that I wanted to talk about. And like I said, this is just us thinking out loud here. Is probably most spots in the United States, as long as you're not hurt, you could probably hike out. God, most of them in a day, few days. You know, there's not too many places you can hike down to a road in a few days as long as you're not lost. Exceptions, you know, talking about the lower 48 states, there's exceptions, but why, if we're only, you know, a few days out, would you want to stop and trap anyway? You're not going to lose that many calories in trapping. You know, I guess you could set stuff up overnight and hope that you catch something and skin it out in the morning and eat it before you go, and you know that'd probably work. But you know, stopping long term to make sets, you're just preventing yourself from getting out. And then if you are too gummed up to make it out, your trapping is going to be limited anyway. You know, it's if you don't have the strength, or you're busted up to where you're not going to be able to just hike out in a few days, your trapping is going to be limited to, you know, what's very close to you if you're in that sort of situation. You know, and if you are trapping kind of long term and you're trying to sustain your family, you know, how many traps you need? Run at least a dozen. I'm just kind of pulling this out of the air, this number, but if you run a dozen traps per family member, you know, I got four people, 12, 24, 48 traps I got to run every day. I got to go around and check. They're not going to be right on top of each other, so, you know, I got to spread them out. And you know, once I trap stuff that's in my immediate area, you know, the further out I got to get. And so, yeah, so, you know, learning about plants is probably a good idea too, especially for your bushcraft. I know I see a lot of stuff for, you know, people trapping, but plants, and especially if you're hiking out, like if you got in a spot, you know, like I said, 3 days, let's say 3 days hiking out, you want to stop and try trapping something, or you kind of want to just graze on what you find going out, you know, oh, here's some lettuce, you know, whatever, and just kind of eat while you're going out. Or even fishing might be a little bit quicker, you know, just have some hooks and a stick and, you know, flip over some rocks for some natural bait. But anyway, this is just to get you thinking, you know, what's your bushcraft to you? Are you thinking like long-term survival, or are you thinking, you know, just kind of an immediate thing? You know, I guess for me, you know, being able to run snares and getting good at this is more of a, if something does happen, it'll get us by for a while till we come up with a better plan. You know, it's like food preparation. I you know, we put food away, and if we did get in a bad spot, I have food to last us a little while, keep something in our belly until we, you know, get a garden growing or whatever. So you know, what's your bushcraft? Why are you doing this? Are you doing it for short term, long term? You know, it's fun just to even just do it for fun. You know, but and something I would recommend is if you haven't trapped and you can get a trapping license and go out and do it, I would suggest getting some experience trapping, so that you don't have any sort of preconceived notions in your head of how things are going to be, and then have that kind of jerked out from under you. You know, have go through and trap for a season and just learn and see, you know, how much it takes, and so if something happens, you'll know what to expect. You know, I was do that, you know. And something else to think about too, you know, we're talking about, you know, short term, long term. On your long term, like, okay, I'll go hawk a spot, and you'll find a little patch, and there'll be a few bunnies in there, let's say 6 bunnies. So I go in there and I kill 2 or 3 of them, because I got to leave 3 or 4 so that I have bunnies to hunt next year. Because if I kill off all those 6, I'm not going to have any bunnies next year. I just took out all the breeders. And so if you're thinking that you're bushcraft and you're going to have to survive long term, you can't wipe out your hunting fields. You can't wipe out where you're trapping and stuff. You have to protect it. You got to be your own game warden. And thinking long term, if this shit hits the fan situation, you got to think long term. If you're feeding your family, you don't want to just kill everything in an area. You kind of want to leave breeders so you can come back and have something to hunt next year. Something to sustain. And part of it, if there's a bunch of people, because let's face it, a lot of the deer are just going to be wiped out. Deer are big, and people know that you eat deer, and they're going to go out and shoot deer. We're people that know how to snare and trap. We're going to be at a little bit more of an advantage. Our diet, what we can add to our diet increases because of our knowledge. But a lot of people are going to go out and shoot deer, and it's not going to be long before deer are a resource of the past. You're not going to see deer. Everybody's plan is to go up, move up in the woods, and shoot deer and live off of deer. Well, there's not a lot of calories in deer, and everybody else got that same plan. So you might want to think outside the box, think of something a little bit different. Think about how am I preparing short term versus long term. And but yeah, like I said, this isn't to criticize or to judge or make anybody feel incompetent. I'm learning these skills, and I'm going to be posting. I think here within a week I'll be posting videos of different traps, and I have some ideas about that. But but think about that. At least invest some thought into where all that goes, and do I actually have enough practical experience with that trap, and set my expectations accordingly. And so, like I said, just something to think about. I like to think about stuff, and sometimes I overcomplicate it, but if I have some good ideas, I'm going to pass them on to you. But anyway, thanks for watching Hawks and Bushcraft. We'll catch you later. Bye.